I want to talk about privacy, because privacy is not a partisan issue. It never has been, never should be. I remember 30 years ago, I was in the minority. The Republicans were in the majority and controlled the Senate. And I worked with my colleagues, and I led an effort to write the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, ECPA. One, it required a lot of education of everybody, because back then electronic mail was an emerging technology. The World Wide Web was unimaginable. Electronic data storage was astronomically expensive. No one could have envisioned the way mobile technologies would transform our lives. But fortunately, many of us in Congress had the foresight to anticipate that these new electronic communications would also need privacy protections. That was 30 years ago. Look what has changed since then. And so now, 3 decades later, that law is out of date. So today, the senator from Utah, Senator Leahy, and I are reintroducing the ECPA Amendments Act of 2015. We want to bring this law into the 21st century. Our legislation is very straightforward. It ensures that the private information that we Americans electronically store in the cloud gets the same protection as the private information we Americans physically store at home. And just as it did in 1986, I hope that the Senate will come together on a bipartisan basis to support these common sense protections. Just think, Mr. President, all of us have an expectation that the things we store in our house, that they are private. If somebody wants to go and see them, law enforcement wants to, they have to go through all types of search warrants and so forth to go in there. But there seems to be an idea that if they're stored electronically elsewhere, that those rules shouldn't apply. I believe they should. And the bill that Senator Leahy and I introduced today protects Americans' digital privacy, and their emails and all the other files and photographs they store in the cloud. It promotes cloud computing and other new technologies. It promotes it because I believe it will build consumer trust, but it also provides law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to ensure public safety. To remind my colleagues that several years ago, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit found that email was fully protected by the Fourth Amendment. It said that the Fourth Amendment must keep pace with the inexorable march of technological progress, or its guarantees will wither and perish. This bill takes up that challenge. Obviously, we have technologies today that just a couple generations ago nobody would have dreamed of. But we have a Constitution that has protected this country for well over 200 years, and we hope will protect it for hundreds of years in the future. And we want to make sure that our laws keep up with the protections that we Americans expect from our Constitution. So first and most importantly, the bill enshrines in statute the fundamental Fourth Amendment warrant requirement for email, text, and other electronic data. It requires that the government have a criminal search warrant based on probable cause to obtain the stored content of Americans' email and other electronic communications from third-party providers, the same way the government would have to have that same kind of search warrant to go into your home and start going through files that you have in your home. The second major component of the bill requires law enforcement agencies to promptly notify individuals when the government has obtained their emails from their service providers. Now, there is a small exception for a delay to protect the integrity of ongoing investigations, no differently than we do in other law enforcement matters. And I think because we've worked so hard on this is not a Republican or Democratic issue. It's not liberal or conservative. In fact, Senator Leahy and I would note that we have a broad coalition of more than 50 privacy, civil liberties, civil rights, and technology industry groups and leaders from across the political spectrum that have endorsed this ECPA reform effort. This support spans from the Heritage Foundation and Americans for Tax Reform to the Center for Democracy and Technology and the ACLU. And I'd ask that the January 22nd, 2015 coalition letter in support of the bill be entered in the record at this point.
Without objection.
And I'm also pleased that Senators Moran and Shaheen and Cornyn and Merkley and Gardner and Blumenthal have joined this effort with Senator Leahy and myself. And I commend them because we do have an opportunity this year to make progress on bipartisan, common sense legislation to protect the privacy of Americans' email and update our laws to keep pace with technology. The last Congress, the Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously supported this bill, Republicans and Democrats alike. We've continued the hard work of building a broad bipartisan coalition in support of this bill. Now's the time to act swiftly to bring our privacy protections into the digital age. And I'll continue to work with Senator Leahy and Senator Cornyn, Senator Moran, Senator Shaheen, Senator Merkley, Senator Gardner, and Senator Blumenthal on this because, one, I'm proud to have them as co-sponsors, but I'm also proud that we're doing the right thing. And, Mr. President, I'd ask my full statement be made part of the record.
Without objection.